Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another all-new edition of Inside Story of Wrestling. I'm Damian Nelson, sitting alongside David Octavius, the Tiberius, the alleged backyard, one-time knockout, straight edge, hardcore Hall of Famer hero. And David, you know, this is quickly becoming my favorite show, Inside Story of Wrestling.
It's a great show. It's highly entertaining, and it's not gossip and innuendo. It's not rumors.
No, we've long been ones who go to the source, and on this show we bring you first-hand stories from the source, the men, the women, the people who have lived through the inside of professional wrestling. And we, last time we were with you, our guest was Barry Darsow, one half of Demolition, the man named Smash / Repo Man, and more.
True chef.
But today we are privileged to be joined by a man who you all know by name and more. And his name is, I can't give it justice, so I'd like to hear it from him himself. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Inside Story of Wrestling, Armando Estrada. How did I do?
Absolutely terrible, Mr. Nelson.
Of course.
Absolutely terrible. You gave the big goof next to you a much bigger introduction than you gave me. And I'm a little bit offended. Also, I'm not done. I'm just starting. First of all, you made the interview for 7 o'clock. Then you bumped me to 5. Then you said, let's do it at 6. Who's the main event here? Don't ever bump me, because I am the main event. Me, the one and only, Armando Alejandro Estrada.
Oh, I missed that. Armando, it's great to have you here on the program from your home in Illinois. How are you?
I'm doing all right, given the circumstances and what we're all, dealing with. I guess it's unprecedented times, and we're just doing the best we can, trying to stay holed up, trying to stay sane. Luckily, I have the ability to perform my work duties from the comfort of my own home, so that hasn't changed much. But there's some people in the house are getting a little antsy, and understandably so. You get locked into a room with me for 3 weeks, and you won't do very well either.
How many times do you walk around the house screaming your own name?
Just 7 o'clock in the morning, at noon, and at 3 p.m. So just 3 times.
You can't do. Yeah, it's perfect. That's all you need.
Well, let's get into it. And such a storied career, and most people obviously remember you from your time as Armando Estrada, but there was a lot more that happened before that. You spent time in OVW, and you worked under the tutelage of Paul Heyman there, but you also had some interesting names, and I guess you could call them gimmicks, in OVW as well. At one point,
you want to call it a gimmick? Continue.
Well, I mean, your name was Osama.
Yeah, and I'll credit the incomparable Jim Cornette for giving me that name. It wasn't my choice, but at the time, and I was just starting out. This was shortly after 9/11. The characters Muhammad Hassan and Davari had emerged as the Arab Americans that were, kind of had a gripe with the government or all things America. And Cornette felt that they needed a bodyguard when they were still in the developmental system. And I was, pretty sizable performer. So Cornette asked me to grab a black suit and show up. And sure enough, I did. And next thing I know, I'm on the OVW TV as the bodyguard to Hassan and Davari. So that was my first actual job in the world of professional wrestling. And the name was Osama. So we got a little bit of heat.
So it's a little bit, yeah, a little bit. In that time, though, that even was a pretty risque story, if you will, because we would see Muhammad Hassan come up to WWE. We lost you. Can't
no audio.
Oh, sorry.
No audio.
There we go. Now I think we're better. All right. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But that was a trying angle, if you will, a gimmick, if you will, storyline, because it was coming off of 9/11. Muhammad Hassan was clearly what Muhammad Hassan was, and then they gave you the name Osama. How did you feel about that as a performer?
I wasn't crazy about it, but it was an opportunity, and I knew it was just kind of a foot in the door. So I ran with it for about a year and a half, and actually started to get really comfortable on my own, because when those guys, Hassan and Davari, got called up to Raw, which by the way was all of 6 weeks after I was paired with them,
Oh,
they
wow.
were already they were already on the way to, preparing for Raw, and they were basically in OVW just ironing out the kinks, so to speak. So I was a last minute addition. Those guys went up. I stayed in OVW. I was nowhere near ready to be on the main roster. So I embraced the gimmick. I went out. I worked all the house shows. I did, some dark matches. Eventually made it to TV as that character, primarily used as enhancement. But I just got really comfortable being that character, which I would say would be more of a modern day version of the Iron Sheik. So
Oh.
I ran with that for a year and a half, and then parlayed that into, I went from talking with one accent to talking with another funny accent. So it worked out well.
So for a guy that goes to OVW not under contract, you had to earn that on your own. They put you in a pretty risque situation right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny because the way I transformed into who would be known as, Armando Estrada was, Hassan was on the main roster. He was getting ready to work with, I think he was working with Undertaker. And there was a controversial angle that aired on SmackDown, uh, that the angle aired the same day as a bombing in London, and WWE opted to air the angle, which consisted of Davari being carried out by masked men,
Yeah.
and Hassan was praying, and there was just a lot of innuendos towards religion and terrorism. And when that aired, I believe it was UPN at the time, opted to pull the plug on those characters and basically said, we can never show those characters. We won't ever have those characters on our network again. Now, at the time, what a lot of people don't know is I was getting ready to debut alongside those guys on the main roster as one of the masked henchmen.
Really?
I don't know how far that would have gone. I don't know if that was supposed to be a one-off, but I remember Tommy Dreamer being very close to signing me. Tommy was running developmental at the time, and we were going back and forth, and I was just awaiting a contract. And when the angle aired and the decision was made to basically remove those characters from the TV, Tommy said to me, "You've got to basically redo your gimmick and come up with something new." So that was actually a very challenging time where, again, I had gotten comfortable with the character and in the ring and on the microphone, and I was dejected. I went home. I went from the cusp of having a contract to having to create a character from scratch.
Yeah.
And I went home and I put in Scarface.
Huh.
And I watched the Al Pacino movie from the early '80s, and I was taken aback by the strength of the Al Pacino character, and then the leading guy, the guy that I forget the actor's name, but I think his right hand man was Manolo. And between both of those guys, I studied their characters, their mannerisms, some of the things they said, how they said them. That is actually how I came up with the Estrada character, at least the very early version of the Armando Estrada character. And lo and behold, 3 months after I rolled out the Armando character, I got called to do an audition, before a Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up getting signed to WWE. I skipped the developmental contract. I went straight to TV.
And you came up with that all on your own. That wasn't a creative or a writer. That was you.
That was all me, 100%. Paul Heyman, who had started booking OVW TV or booking OVW at that time, along with Al Snow and Danny Davis and Tommy Dreamer to an extent. Paul gave me the ball as the Armando character, and I swear he had me. We had a 1 hour show. I was probably in 4, maybe 5 segments of that show. So he let me get comfortable and finding that character, fine tuning it. A lot of the things that you saw on Raw that I would do later on, I started doing in developmental in OVW in probably 4 or 5 months earlier.
Yeah.
But that was all me. The name, the catchphrases, the look, the cigars. The only thing that I remember getting a call about a week before I debuted from Michael Hayes. And Michael said, we want you to have a hat, but not the hat that you've been wearing in OVW, which is funny because in OVW, I basically wore this, but a black version.
Yeah.
And Michael said, go out and get a white one. So that was the extent of their creative input into the look of the character. I was wearing a black hat in OVW, and I went to, I switched it up to the white hat that everybody kind of knew me for. So.
Wow. It's they say that the good guys wear the white hats.
Not me, amigo.
So wait, in OVW, is there a time where you were running with a story where you were running for mayor or the governor of Kentucky?
Amigo, dictator. Get it right.
Dictator, of course. How could I?
Doing the character, the Armando character is a shady. There's a number of things, but anything that I thought was shady, I thought I could incorporate into my character. So I remember watching a documentary on Nixon, and during the Watergate scandal, and Nixon would say things like, "I am not a crook," and he'd, and I started doing that. So I guess when I started doing that, I started saying, and I would do this in matches. I would say, I am not a criminal. Vote for me. And so it kind of morphed into, I am not a criminal, mocking somebody in politics to, hey, what if I ran for politics? But if I ran for politics, vote for me. But what would I be? And Paul Heyman actually came up with calling me the dictator of Kentucky.
Wow.
So my nickname at the time was Big Lalo, and Lalo is a nickname for somebody named Alejandro. So vote for Lalo became a thing. And because I would butcher the Spanish language, anything that started with a V, I would pronunciate with a B.
Yeah.
So vote for Lalo became a thing. And there's a few pictures on the Google machine that show me holding a sign that says vote for Lalo or vote for Lalo, or fans would come to the arena with "I voted for Lalo," so that was kind of a cool thing.
Awesome. That's very interesting.
A dictator of Kentucky.
Well, I mean, it sort of fits, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
What's so crazy is that the character was a heel, but as I started doing the catchphrases on TV every week, the boys would pop, and a good indicator if something's getting over is if you're popping the boys in the back, the audience, because remember, the boys are all fans too.
Right.
If you're popping the boys, you're gonna pop the crowd most of the time. So when I would do my shtick and it was so over the top and it was so ridiculous, the crowd started to chant my name and do all my catchphrases with me, and I became a babyface. So they turned me into a babyface, and I would work all the live events as a babyface, which was very weird for me.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoy being heel, but to have me go the other, to work the other side was like very new, not something I expected, but I actually enjoyed it because I thought I did a good job.
Yeah. Well, when you would eventually make your way up to WWE, the main roster, if you will, you'd find yourself managing Umaga. How did that come to be, and how did you end up in that role?
So I'd mentioned how I got called to do an audition before an episode of Raw in early 2006. It was in Hershey, Pennsylvania,
Ah,
and I
Hershey
got the
Park Arena.
call. Yeah, so Howard Finkel calls me roughly, I don't know, 2 days before, and says, "Hey, you've been summoned, and we'd like to fly you into TV this Monday in Hershey. Can you make it?" Gee, let me check my
Yeah.
schedule, amigo. Of course I can make it. So they fly me to Hershey. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea. I had never met, Eddie Fatu. Um, and I sit in catering. So I'm at the building that Monday. I'm in catering. I feel like I'm in catering all day because at this point I'm not signed. I'm not a
Hmm.
contracted talent. So I'm just minding my P's and Q's. And when you're a new guy and you're in that environment, you don't know anybody. You might know one or two guys who maybe recently got called up, but other than that, like you're walking on eggshells trying not to be in the way.
Yeah.
So I hung out in catering most of the day, and then probably a couple hours before the doors opened, a production assistant came and grabbed me and says, "All right, they're ready for you." And I had, again, no idea what I'm doing, no script.
Wow.
Nobody had said anything to me. And I'm wearing my suit, and I can't remember if I had a hat or if I didn't for this particular vignette
Uh-huh.
or pre-tape rather. So they bring me into the pre-tape room, which is where they film a lot of the stuff that airs during the show or for WWE.com. And that's the first time that I met, who would go on to be Umaga, but at the time, Jamal and Rosie, who were
Ah,
doing the 3 minute warning tag team.
yes.
Right.
And Steve Lombardi was running, Steve Lombardi, better known as the Brooklyn
Who
Brawler,
would have thought that
he
would be
was
the
running the
spot?
pre tape.
You know,
What was that?
whoever would have thought that would be the Brooklyn Brawlers spot? Was to be the pre-tapes.
Yeah, he had that spot for a long time. He did very well. So Steve calls me in and says, "Hey, we want you to, you're going to play the role of the manager, and we want you to talk about managing this team and how you're going to lead them to greatness." And I'm like, "All right, got it." 5 seconds of preparation. They count me down, and literally the camera opens up on Rosie and Jamal. And then I walk in and I basically interrupt. They didn't know I was supposedly coming. So I put my arms around them. I introduce myself to these gigantic Samoan men. And I'm, the same Armando over the top. Amigos, like, I'm going to take you straight to the top. Better than the Midnight Express. Better than the Four Horsemen. Better than Demolition. Better than the Bushwhackers. A lot better than the Bushwhackers. Or something along those lines. And I start doing this shtick, and we start flowing. And I introduced myself to the camera, and we went about 2 minutes, maybe two and a half. And then Lombardi, he cuts it, and everybody's clapping. And he's like, "That was fucking great, bro. That was great." All right. And that was the extent. And I leave, and I said thank you to the other guys. And I get on a plane. I go back to Louisville, Kentucky, and I get a call 4 days later from John Laurinaitis wanting to offer me a contract to start on Raw.
That is awesome. That is,
That's fantastic.
Yep.
But then, so what happened between then and then just being Umaga? We're going from 3 minute warning to just
So
Umaga.
So I think the initial, you got to remember in the world of WWE, things can change on the dime. And sometimes, this was in January, we didn't debut until April. Okay.
wow.
In February, my understanding was that I was going to start as the manager of 3 minute warning. And then there was a shift in plans, and I don't know any details as to what caused that shift, but they decided to go with Eddie Fatu as a singles. They decided to go with Jamal as a single, with me as his manager.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know what precipitated that, but it wasn't until a week prior to us debuting, that I found out that we were going to debut on Raw with me in the managerial role of this repackaged, tag team wrestler.
And starting off with the Nature Boy, your very first time on Raw, right?
Not only was it my debut, not only was it in my hometown of Chicago, in the building that I sat in as a fan dozens of times, okay? But it was the night after WrestleMania, which is a huge spotlight.
Oh God, big bro.
And am I boring you, Damien? Am I boring you, amigo?
No. How could
You don't think
you
I
ever
saw the
bore
yawn?
me? I mean, you were almost the dictator of Kentucky.
Edit that out. So not only was it in Chicago, not only was it the night after WrestleMania, not only is it live TV, but it's against a guy that I emulated and loved my entire career. I mean, one of the greatest of all time, Nature Boy Ric Flair. So, I'd heard some rumblings that, originally that was going to be Shawn Michaels in that role.
Ah,
Then I heard it may be Mick Foley, and eventually it was Rick. So, but I didn't know what we were doing that day until, 4 hours, maybe 4 hours prior, 5 hours prior.
what kind of
So,
nerves
but
does that
the
cause,
worst,
though? I mean, you're in your hometown, as you said, in front of your home audience. Obviously, probably friends and
yep.
family are there. You don't know what you're doing. That has to put an amazing amount of stress on you to have to go out there and perform an unknown role.
Damien, I'm a professional, amigo. Come on.
I said that earlier.
Yes. So, yes, there was a little bit of nerves, but if you don't have nerves in this business, then, maybe you're in the wrong business. I think any performer, before they go through the curtain, before the red light comes on, there's got to be a little something in your stomach. It's not necessarily, I'm nervous about not doing a good job, but for me, it's like I'm nervous about not hitting a home run. I want to go out there and put in the absolute best performance I can. I still do that today in my job as a sales professional. When I present to people, I have to go out and give the absolute best presentation that I can. There's no phoning it in with me. I can't put in a half-ass effort. Like I don't operate that way. So the worst part of that night is if you go back and listen to the promo, I had bronchitis and I lost my voice. I had a sinus infection. I could
Bronchitis.
barely get the words out.
Was there a fire in
Yeah,
there too?
so I had. Remember, amigo, I had Cuban cigars, so maybe I smoked a few of them the night before. Um, the you guys completely threw me off. See,
It was the Sweet Brown reference, right?
Yes, it was. Yes.
that's what it was.
I got bronchitis.
But I had I had never, used the WWE microphone and didn't realize how powerful their AV equipment is. I had been used to using, second-rate and third-rate microphones in OVW and whatnot. And it's funny, like some of my OVW stuff, it wasn't even a live mic. I'd hold the mic in my hand, but I'd be screaming at the top of my lungs. So the
Really?
camera would pick me up, but there was no live mic. So
Huh.
I was so concerned with the cameras or with the audio picking up my promo that I was screaming at the top of my lungs. And you go back and hear it, go back and listen to it, and you'll know what I'm talking about. I sound nothing like I would
Fascinating.
sound in subsequent weeks. Yeah.
Fascinating. So the Umaga runs through Detroit and WrestleMania 23. I mean,
Oh, hold on a second. Not only was that, but he had John Cena shortly after that.
true.
I mean,
Well,
Armando Estrada and
yeah, we
Armando
worked with
all the top guys.
that's right, amigo. We were, it's funny. I'll never forget sitting down with, Michael Hayes and Vince McMahon, and this was after a show. We were in, one of the hotel bars, and we're sitting there. It's actually me and Michael first. It's probably 1 o'clock in the morning, and then lo and behold, Vince walks into the bar, and I'll never forget. He's got on a sweatshirt that says "World's best grandpa. Okay? And there's nobody there. It's literally me and Freebird Michael Hayes, and we're sitting there, and I just remember asking Michael about the future plans, and I said, "When do you expect the first loss to come?" And I remember Freebird saying, "You ain't losing," as in, Umaga's not losing, and he wasn't lying because that was May or June,
Yeah.
and Umaga ran through everybody, and then Cena finally handed him, his first loss in January of the following year.
Wow. And that was a
So
huge, you can call it a push, I guess, that Umaga got. He was just running through the roster. And as you said, not jobbers, if you will, but he was running through the big name talent, shooting up to the top of the roster.
yeah, I mean, there were a lot of enhancement guys in the beginning, just to get him over.
Yeah.
There was a lot of 1, 2, 3 minute squash matches on TV. At the house shows, we worked with guys like Eugene, guys like Val Venus. I remember squashing the Highlanders at some house shows. So there was a lot of those guys who, kind of help prepare you. And then the first big program we had was with Kane, Mayor Jacobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mayor Jacobs.
And that they actually had great chemistry. When you get two big guys on there, that can be maybe a little, clunky,
Yeah.
but they worked very well together, which is a testament to how good they both were, in the ring, and they had the chemistry. And sometimes, you could take two talents who are really good together, really good, but you put them in the ring and there's no chemistry.
Yeah.
But Kane and Umaga had great chemistry. We worked with Glenn for about 3 months. Because what you see on TV is just a small portion of what we do. Obviously, we're touring all over the world. 75% of the matches are not televised.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. 75% of our performances are not aired on TV. So those guys worked all over. They had a good run, and usually Kane is the guy that you work with before you go and work with Cena. At least back then.
Yeah. WrestleMania 23. Probably Umaga's spotlight, biggest match. And it wasn't just him. I mean, the President of the United States was part of that match, along with
Your guy.
along with Vince McMahon and yes, Dave's guy. You're right.
Yeah.
But what a meteoric rise for Umaga in wrestling. But your time in WWE wouldn't end with Umaga. You would actually go on to be the general manager of ECW. How did that come about?
So at the time, WWE relaunched the ECW brand, and I want to say it was during the run with Umaga. Paul Heyman, as I mentioned, he was a big advocate of mine. Eventually, Dave Lagana. Dave Lagana was, I believe Dave was started to at least write for ECW around the time that my run with Umaga ended. And I just kept hearing that, hey, sit tight, we're going to bring you back to ECW. And I didn't know under what capacity. I thought I would just go on to manage, somebody else. So lo and behold, I got a call about a week before I debuted, and it was Lagana, and he said, be ready to go. You'll be at TV. We're debuting you as the new ECW general manager. I think Lagana was he was like a student of Paul, and Lagana liked my work. I think Lagana, he understood who I was as a character.
Yeah.
So he knew how to write for me. So I credit, Lagana for me coming back to ECW at that time.
And Lagana, who's now a part of the NWA down in Atlanta at Center Stage. That role, though, general manager, there's a lot of weight on those shoulders because you're carrying pretty much the entire show as the public face, the public authority figure, if you will. But every week, it's all you.
Absolutely. I got to deal with budgets. I got to deal with scheduling. I got to deal with, disgruntled employees who don't like their push or lack of.
Zombies,
But, it was a fun role. it was a fun role. I enjoyed it because I got to interact with all the talent. And at the time, we had CM Punk, we had John Morrison, we had Elijah Burke, and the guys from the New Breed. We had some of the ECW originals like Tommy Dreamer. Um, I
Was that
think
when
Matt
Drew
Hardy,
McIntyre was
was
anointed
around.
as well?
Not on ECW. Drew would
I
have
thought
been
that was on
anointed
That
on
was on
ECW.
SmackDown.
SmackDown.
Oh, sorry.
SmackDown.
No, that was on. Yeah, when
No,
they made him
Elijah
the
Burke
chosen
was
one. That was
anointed
as
as
what?
as the future by Vince McMahon, I thought, on
On
ECW.
ECW,
Yeah.
yes. He might have been.
That might have happened. I might have been in a meeting at that time with another.
Busy man being the general manager, of
Well,
course.
Yeah, but it was good to get. I got to work with different talents, right? And there was a lot more backstage stuff
Yeah.
than there was in the ring. So that aspect was different. Like I enjoyed being in the ring. I enjoyed being ringside, and then in that role as GM, I found myself in the back a lot.
and then you got to work with Colin Delaney. So we go with Umaga, John Cena, WrestleMania, Donald Trump, and they bring
Main
in
event in my
Colin.
first year.
Yeah, yeah. So, what's going through your mind when they say, "Hey, we have this program with you with this kid, and here he is," and what do you think?
So I think at that time the head writer of ECW had changed again. I was on again, off again. There's some weeks I was on the show, some weeks I wasn't. Um, I had made it I had made it known that I was interested in getting in the ring because I was a trained wrestler.
Yeah.
I had been working in OVW. I felt I was more than capable in the ring, um, and I just felt like I wasn't uh, contributing to the best of my abilities. I didn't feel they were using me to the best of my capabilities, and so I'd let it be known. I would work out before the shows. I'd get in the ring. And I remember Vin said to me, and I'll never forget this. Vince says to me after I think I was working with Kofi. Excuse me. So I'm working with Kofi. I'm just doing like a match before the cameras or before the doors open. It's not a dark match. It's just a practice match. We had a nice little 7 or 8 minute match, and I get out of the ring, and Vince is right there, and he looks at me, and I'm in like skinny Gold's tank top, like just I'm 225, I'm shredded,
Yeah.
I'm 8 pack, I'm just like probably in the best physical shape of my life. And Vince looks at me and says, "God damn, I didn't know you could work.
Wow.
When you're ready, we're going to do something explosive with you."
Nice.
And I quote. So you hear that from Vince McMahon. You're a young talent. You're fucking on top of the world. You just, you're just like head exploded. Vince McMahon said, "We're going to do something explosive with you."
Yeah.
And I get paired with Colin Delaney. So look, I had no problem working with Colin, but at the time, ECW wasn't like given a lot of priority. It was, for all intents and purposes, the C show.
Yeah.
And I don't even think Vince watched a lot of ECW. Like normally Vince would be in Gorilla for everything. I don't think Vince sat in Gorilla for ECW. At least towards the end, he didn't. But I think Chris DeJoseph,
Hmm.
who was probably better known as Big Dick Johnson,
Yes.
in working with DX and whatnot. But DJ, he started writing ECW. And then just one day out of the blue, I think he came up and he was like, "Hey, we're going to have you wrestle Colin next week and he's going to go over." And I didn't care. Like, you're gonna beat me in a predetermined wrestling match. That's great. Guess what? I'm still over. People are going to know who I am.
Right.
Um, but I didn't know if that was necessarily the best use for a guy like me to just, feed me to Colin to get Colin over. And I know we were telling a story at the time where every week I would put Colin in an unpredictable or unprecarious
Hmm.
situation and have him wrestle Mark Henry and then Kali and then Shelton Benjamin and just Big Show, like all these guys would just squash Colin, and he would never earn his contract. And then I said, all right, one day I'm gonna give, this is your final opportunity to earn a contract, but you got to beat me. And sure enough, he beat me, and it was very predictable. And I think the whole world knew he was going to beat me, and it was my first match. And I just think that kind of took a lot of the wind out of my sails,
Well, the whole
because that's how they used me for my first match.
the whole world may have known that Con Delaney was going to beat you, but the whole world had no clue when you took your shirt off. You had a 10-pack. There's
You know what? I remember watching that, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Whoa, wait a minute! When
where did this happen?
yeah."
Yes.
And right there, as you said, the credibility and your look was shocking to everybody, apparently, including Vince McMahon. But for us watching at home as well, it's like, "Whoa, wait a minute!
You don't expect
can
to
work."
see a manager that jacked ever.
Heenan wasn't.
Nor Freddie Blassie.
Paul Ellering, Paul Ellering was, but Paul Ellering was a worker. And remember,
Yeah.
I was a worker. I got told to be a manager. Um, Again, they had me wear a suit for 2.5 years
Yep.
before I got in the ring. And then, so people who knew me from OVW weren't shocked, but everybody else that had never seen me was like, whoa. And it was like, well, guys, I've always been in shape, but again, I've been covered up in a suit for all this time. So
Imagine how much the dynamic would have changed back when it was Umaga and Cena, Umaga and Lashley, if the fans would have known that you were built just as good as a John Cena or a Bobby Lashley.
perhaps, but that's why they had me cover up. Maybe. I remember, Umaga when we started on house shows. I wouldn't always wear a suit. So if we were in, Des Moines, Iowa, and it was a hot arena that we were in, I'd go out there and I would wear the Cuban button up, but I would leave it unbuttoned, you know. And that was my look in OVW when I wrestled. I would go to the ring. I would wrestle in dress pants, and I would have like a Cuban gallardera, which is a dress shirt. You see all the old time mob guys wearing them,
Yeah.
but it was like I would be able to unbutton it and just take it off and have my match. So when I would start accompanying Umaga on the house shows, I opted to wear that. But Umaga would take a look at my abs and he would say, "Oops, cover that shit up. You're making me look bad." I'm like it's not me that's making you look bad, bro. It's the mayonnaise you dip everything in. Like maybe take it, maybe try Miracle Whip. I don't know. But so there was a lot of people who were like, keep it covered up, keep it covered up. It's kind of like when Mark Mero didn't want Sable showing the goods.
Yeah.
Keep the potato sack on.
You didn't have a
Day.
potato sack though. Armando, we're running out of time here, and this has been a great conversation. We're gonna have to do another episode of this with you because there's so much we didn't get into, including your departure from WWE, your appearance in a Cypress Hill video, all kinds of stuff to still talk about, including more. I think we can go more into Umaga's career as well, since you were right there alongside him on the road. But don't want to cut you off because I know that's going to end up in heat. But we are out of time for this episode. Thank you very, very much for joining us, especially during these trying times. And what advice or what words do you have for fans who are watching wrestling presented in very unique forms right now to get through this troubling time?
Well, if we're talking about the forthcoming empty arena WrestleManias, I'll say just remember why you're a fan and give it a chance before you poo-poo on it.
Yeah.
And Vince McMahon and the WWE are successful for a reason. So take a look at what they're going to present, the WrestleMania weekend. And if that's not your cup of tea, for $9.99 a month, you can watch pretty much anything in the history of professional wrestling.
Yep. Well, good indeed.
That wasn't very insightful, but I'm sorry.
No, it was great. And actually,
But it was honest. For a dictator to be honest, that's fantastic.
Dictator of Kentucky, Armando Alejandro Estrada, thank you so much for dusting off the hat and joining us here on Inside Story of Wrestling. We look forward to having you on again soon. And David, wow, what a night again.
Another one.
We go from Smash to Armando. This is great. I like this show.
Headliners.
Main eventers.
Yes.
Well, that was Inside Story of Wrestling. Folks, we are live with you again tomorrow night for PWR Primetime Live on Fight TV and across our social media networks. Thank you very much for tuning in here tonight, and we'll see you again tomorrow for that one. This is Damian Nelson saying thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.